What up, Jippers? Plays back once again for another No Man's Sky update speculation video. So get your tinfoil hats at the ready, guys, because we're going to be diving into some pretty out there stuff today. For a long time now, many of you have been asking me on any of these next update videos or any of my speculation or prediction videos, but what about procedural cities? No Man's Sky, Hello Games hired a developer that works specifically on procedurally generated cities in the past. It's been about a year now that he's been working there. He has to have been doing something, so why haven't you spoken about it? Well, today we're going to be speaking about that, and believe me, I'm going to be talking about more than just the possibility of cities coming to the game. So let's dive in. So, before we get started, one of the key things that I'm going to be talking about throughout this entire video today is a guy named Sam Swain. Now, Sam Swain is currently a developer working for Hello Games, previously from Lionhead, so he's worked on games like Fable, and he specializes almost entirely on procedural generation, and within that, procedural generation of things like cities and dungeons. So that's going to be the main focus of this video and what that actually means for the next update. Now, I want to point out, and I have to point out, I wouldn't feel right not to, that this guy has first been talked about by Cobra TV. So anyone who's not watching Cobra's videos, please go and make sure you're doing that. That's where I got a lot of my information about this kind of stuff. And also, Cobra is just a really cool guy for when it comes to discussing anything to do with Waking Titan speculation. And a big part of that has been my inspiration for doing these more discussion, tinfoil hat type videos, because it's something I've enjoyed doing and it's something I've enjoyed listening to as part of his subcast. I was even on a recent subcast, and that really ignited my passion for having a bit more of a open discussion type format to some of these videos. So make sure you're going to go check out Cobra TV. Now, if you're looking for a particular video to start with from Cobra, I suggest this recent video that he put out talking about speculation of No Man's Sky next update, and in particular the first 10 seconds. So he added in a really cool little intro to this video, and so many people have completely missed it, thinking it was genuinely just a mistake that he didn't mean to include. But there's actually a nice little breadcrumb trail of clues that he's put in there relating back to Sam Swain and a lot of this procedural generation stuff. So go and check that out and let yourself go deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. So, who is Sam Swain and why do I want to talk about him today? Well, first of all, Sam Swain, like I mentioned, procedural generation developer, lots and lots of work on procedural buildings, cities and dungeons and stuff that he's done in the past. And if you go to his Twitter page right now, it is absolutely plastered with proc gen type stuff, in particular dungeons. Now, this is, in my opinion, one of those surprises that Sean teased about in the next update reveal. So if you remember, they mentioned that the update is going to add a load of cool new stuff, and he thinks there'll be some surprises in there that we're not expecting. Now, my big theory around this video is that one of those big surprises could be dungeons. Now, of course, disclaimer, as with all of these speculation type discussion videos that I do, this is 100% my own personal theory, speculation only, none of this is confirmed. I could be completely wrong, but it's certainly an interesting thing that I wanted to raise, and I feel like the clues are there to make this worthwhile as a discussion topic. So what we do know from a No Man's Sky perspective is the update is coming in the summer. The update is going to contain loads of new stuff. It's going to be the biggest update we've ever seen for No Man's Sky, which in itself is exciting as hell. But we also know kind of further back than that. If we go back to pre-launch days, some of the stuff that Sean talked about, some of the stuff that Hello Games talked about in terms of their vision and stuff that they wanted to include in the game, dungeons was something that has been referenced by them, specifically called out before as something they would like to have added into the game or they would like to see in the game. It never made it into the launch of the game. It hasn't been in any of the updates since, but this could be, in my opinion, the point where we do start to see things like procedural dungeons being added to No Man's Sky. So, back to Sam Swain. Not only is his Twitter absolutely plastered with proc-gen dungeon building and proc-gen city building and proc-gen in general, but he's actually working on a side project right now called Apparence. Now, if you go to his Twitter account, the pinned tweet there has a link to the Apparence website. So this Apparence thing that he's working on, this side project, is actually a new technology that's been designed specifically to allow the interactive visual authoring of detailed and expansive 3D worlds for video games. And he comments on there saying this is a play space for procedural algorithms and their use in the generation of environments and objects. So this is very much a real technology that he's working on. It's a new way of doing proc gen in video games to help build things like cities and dungeons. Now, I strongly recommend everybody watching this video to follow Sam on Twitter and to go and check out this Apparent's website so you can get a bit more context and some background into where this theory of mine has come from and why I'm so strongly convinced that this kind of stuff is going to make it into this update. Now, if you go over to the plan section of the Apparent's website, there's a lot of interesting stuff there talking about the current situation that Sam is in with this technology, and a lot of what he talks about is wanting to continue to work on this as a side project. Now, I'm just going to read out a little section here called the ongoing situation, and this is what he says. Obviously, this is a volatile and exciting time. People will be starting to get their hands on Apparent, and I can begin conversations with people about collaborations, involvement, and potential funding scenarios. It is also the time when the money is getting tight and I have started contract work so I can continue to support my family. I would like to be able to continue work on the project full time, but this is a luxury at this stage, and a mixture of contracting and dev will hopefully be possible and keep development ticking along in the absence of full funding. So that was his update. A little while ago, he was working on this as a side project, but the money was running out and he was knowing that he had to pick up a job or some contract work to keep things going. There was a bit of apprehension there over whether or not he'd be able to continue working on this procedural technology that he's creating with Apparent. Now, the latest update on there, and this is really interesting, so this was just as he joined Hello Games a while back. It said, I have landed a long-term, near full-time role that allows me to also spend some time working on Apparent. So that was obviously referencing when he joined Hello Games. As part of his role at Hello Games, clearly working on procedural generation with them for No Man's Sky, he's also able to continue working on this side project that is Apparent and this procedural city and dungeon building technology. He also says this will hopefully be a happy medium between income and project, and who knows what working at this new company will turn up. Now, one of the big theories, and this theory itself was first raised to me by Cobra, he thinks that when it comes to funding and things like that, he's probably hinting at Hello Labs. Now, as we all know, for those that don't know even, Hello Labs is kind of a spin-off that's been created by Hello Games with the sole purpose of helping people like this, people and developers and companies that are working on procedural generation technology. It helps them by giving them funding, expertise, and advice to allow them to continue progressing the field. So it makes sense to think that possibly one of the avenues that Sam has been able to go down is to get some extra funding from Hello Labs to continue working on this. And it's not too much of a leap to think that some of the work that he's doing probably also translates over to the work that he's doing on No Man's Sky itself. So what do we know so far? We know that Sam is now working for Hello Games. We know that that has also enabled him to continue working on this side project, to continue fleshing out this technology and working more on procedural city creation and dungeon creation in his spare time. Now, if you go to his YouTube account, there's actually some really interesting stuff on Apparent and how it works and what it does. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to show a very brief clip of one of the videos on his channel, and this actually demos what Apparent is doing at the moment. So as you can very clearly see from that clip, he is 100% working, even if it's not with the stuff that he's doing specifically on No Man's Sky and at Hello Games. In his spare time for the Apparent project, he is definitely working on procedural dungeon generation. Now, this looks really, really interesting to me. So the core concept behind this, I'm not going to pretend that I can explain the tech behind it in detail, but the core concept and the feel of what I'm seeing here is that this tool would allow you to create your own assets, so create things like modular walls, terrain pieces, tiles, things that you then slot together into this apparent tool, and that tool will use those assets to generate rooms, dungeons, cities, buildings, whatever it is that you want to make. Most notably here, it looks like it's focused on dungeons, but that could just be one little snippet of what he's doing. So we know the tech is there from just what he's doing on his own on the side, but what's really interesting to think about is if you've got someone like this, someone whose passion and experience is all about developing this kind of cool stuff, these procedural dungeons and these procedural buildings, you know that he's working with Hello Games. So in my mind, it seems quite sensible to make a bit of a leap, a bit of an assumption that perhaps this is the kind of stuff that he's also doing with Hello Games. And then you also pair that with the fact that we know from what's been said in the past that dungeons was something that Hello Games wanted to bring to the game, potentially more ancient ruins and buildings and stuff like that as well, all being a part of what could be coming in the next update. You put all of that together, plus the fact that the logo for the next update is the Atlas symbol, which to my mind, as anyone who's been watching my videos will know, is a very clear indicator that lore is going to be a huge part of this update. You kind of get to get a picture of what some of these surprises could be. So if we're looking at loads more lore and story elements being brought to the game, one way that could definitely happen is if they are adding in things like ancient ruins, buildings, possibly even like towns or cities, but definitely things like dungeons. Now, dungeons being added to the game would be a very cool thing, and in my mind, this is quite a... it's not confirmed, but it's quite a sensible view as to what could potentially be coming in next. Now, obviously, I don't know that for sure, but it's definitely an interesting thing to think about, and if I was going to bet money on it, I would definitely say this could well be one of those surprises that's been hinted at. We could be looking at getting dungeons in No Man's Sky for the first time ever. Now, one really interesting thing that kind of got me set off on this path in the first place was the recent GDC talk that was given by Innes McKendrick. As some of you may have seen, the slides for that talk have now been published on the Vault, which is the GDC archive website. The slides themselves are up. The talk is not yet available to the public in full, but we have had people like Liz England on Twitter who was at the event and live tweeted the whole thing. Now, one of the really interesting things that sparked all of this on there was a particular slide that referenced procedural generation specifically for dungeons. Now, what we do know and what we have confirmed and found out since then is that yes, that slide was used purely as an example. They were talking about how procedural generation works in a game like No Man's Sky and comparing that and giving some more context with how it typically works with other types of procedural generation games, like your typical proc gen dungeon crawler type adventure. But that hint, that little reference to dungeons was what kind of set me on this path. And at first I thought it was nothing, it was just an example. But now digging into Sam Sain's Twitter, digging into the Apparence project, digging into some of the wording on the site there, I'm kind of connecting the dots a little bit, possibly too much, who knows. But it certainly seems plausible to think that all of this could be referencing stuff that they are working on for the next update, and it certainly would be a big surprise if next drops and not only have we got the multiplayer stuff that we're expecting, not only have we got more lore and story, but a big part of how that all fits together is within this whole dungeon building and city building or town building type scenario as well. So from my perspective, if you're adding loads more lore and story, you have to sort of do that. There has to be a way to do that. So it could just be another storyline like the Atlas Rises that doesn't add much new, but knowing that this is going to be the biggest update ever given to the game, and seeing all of this other stuff has got me thinking that actually instead of just a bit more Atlas Rises type story, we could be getting a new story mechanic, and dungeons would be a really good example of how that could apply. So think about the scenario, right? You go into the game and you've now got these underground dungeons. I don't expect them to look like what we've seen there in his Apparence videos. I expect them to be very much No Man's Sky art style, using No Man's Sky assets and buildings and things like that. But the idea of procedural dungeons definitely seems like something that would fit really, really well. So you go down onto a planet, you find some ancient dungeon that you then need to go in and explore, and then you kind of go through there and there's bits of story, things to find, little mini side quest type of things. They could be quite basic, you know, go and explore a dungeon and you get an Atlas stone at the end, or you get some artifact or object that links into this wider lore and story that we expect that they're going to add in this next update. So all of that to me seems to fit really well and has me very, very excited. Now, one other thing that when I pair all of this together and start trying to fit the puzzle pieces into one clear view of what could potentially be coming, obviously not confirmed, I say it again for the millionth time, but like when you start piecing these ideas together, you get a concept and a view as to what the next update could potentially be looking like. Now, I think at this point, most of us accept that multiplayer is definitely going to be built on in this update. When they dropped Atlas Rises, they added the orbs, which is a very rudimentary, basic foundation for what multiplayer in No Man's Sky could look like. We can't properly see other players yet, we don't have player models, and when we see other players, although we're on the same planet, we're not in the same exact instance of a planet. So for example, what I mean by that is if I'm on a planet with Cobra or somebody else, or you meet someone in multiplayer, if I use a plasma grenade and blow a hole in the planet, we're on the same planet, we can see the same stuff, but we can't see my interaction with that planet. So we're not actually in the same instance of a planet, even though everything looks like it's the same planet. So I could dig a hole, the other player wouldn't be able to see that. And I think a big part of building this synchronous multiplayer, which is very clearly one of the goals that they've got going forward, is to make that a thing. Make it so that 2 players or 3 players or 12 players or 30 players, however many it ends up being, can get together on one server, on one instance of a planet, and really truly explore that together as a team, as a co-op group, as a little party. Now, one thing that would be really cool if you think about dungeons potentially being added would be the idea of raiding parties. Now, a lot of people have played dungeon crawler type games. There's a lot of multiplayer ones out there. There are even proc-gen multiplayer dungeon crawler games out there where you can get together with a group of people, go and explore a procedurally generated dungeon as a team, fight the monsters in there, fight the baddies, collect all the loot, that kind of stuff. Now, that being in No Man's Sky would be incredible, and this has like genuinely got me thinking that could be a real possibility. So we could, as a next step for multiplayer, we've got multiplayer added. I'm going to assume that multiplayer is going to be built on and we will be able to properly meet up and explore the same place. Now, what would be better than actually having a co-op goal, something that you can do together as a team to make that multiplayer more worthwhile? It would be, yes, it would be awesome to just be able to see other people and explore a planet together. Don't get me wrong, if that's all it ends up being, I'm still going to be super happy and excited. But the thought of potentially actually having a goal to work towards or a little quest to do as a group, to me, sounds really fun. And that fits perfectly with the idea of going into a dungeon with a group of like 3 or 4 other people, a couple of travelers going down, exploring an ancient ruin, exploring like some Atlas temple or some dungeon or like some old like Viking abandoned ruin or something like that. You go down there together as a team, you have to work together to take out the sentinels or the enemies that are in there, and at the end of that you get some loot that you guys can all share. That all seems to fit really well in my mind. I don't know if you guys think I'm just jumping the gun massively here, and I could be, I definitely could be. But to me, that fits together really well and would be so freaking awesome. And I am actually now adding that to one of my predictions to what could be coming in the next update. I genuinely believe that all the clues and signs are there to at least make this not a completely ridiculous idea. Maybe it won't be as cool as I'm building it up in my mind, maybe it won't be as advanced as that, but definitely the idea of like some small little dungeon that we could possibly go and explore. Even better if we can go and explore that with a team of other travelers. That to me sounds cool and it sounds plausible, and I'm saying it here officially, that is now one of my new predictions for what is coming in the No Man's Sky next update in the summer. Now, while a lot of what I've talked about here is kind of specific to dungeons and procedural dungeons in particular, the apparent tool and the website and some of the stuff and the features and videos and teasers and clips of everything he's working on for that particular project is more than just that. So it's not just dungeons, it's genuinely like bigger than that. It's about building cities and worlds and this whole way of doing procedural generation that's different and easier and better than previous techniques of doing it and previous tech for doing it. So there's a lot of stuff in there that talks about fully procedurally generated cities that also have space and spaceships and all of that kind of stuff, and a lot of that ties in really well with the concept behind No Man's Sky. So if they were going to add dungeons, there's no reason why they couldn't add maybe smaller towns or bigger ruins, or even potentially cities at some point in the future could also be a thing that comes to certain planets. Now that would be mind-blowing. I don't know, like I don't want to get too excited. I don't think we're going to see fully fleshed out cities and huge worlds and environments to go and explore, but the idea of dungeons and smaller towns or collections of ruins, building on the kind of stuff we see now, but adding to that, making it bigger and giving a bit more of a purpose to exploring things like ruins and monoliths and structures and stuff like that in the game. It all adds up to me quite well, and it has me super excited thinking that this could be a real possibility. Even if it's not in the next update, this guy is clearly working on that kind of tech. He's an expert in this field. This is what he does. Like, this is his bread and butter, and they've brought him into Hello Games to work on No Man's Sky. And I can't see, like, what else would he be doing if he's not working on things like procedural dungeons and buildings and environments in the game. Like, it would be weird if he was just brought in to do something completely different. In my mind, it just wouldn't make sense. So yeah, that was kind of the main bit of what I wanted to talk about. The idea of procedural dungeons being a possibility for the next update. Potentially procedural towns, cities, ruins. Maybe not huge scale things, but like bigger than what we've got now. And then combining that with what I think is definitely going to be the main focus of the update, which is going to be the lore and the story. All of that fitting together would give you much more of a purpose. So if there is a story, it would be a story that actually has mission-y, quest-type elements to it. So you would have areas to go and explore, whether it be a dungeon or a town or a ruin or even a crashed, like, huge crashed ship or space station or something like that. It would give you a place to go and put some story in and to layer that on top and give you something to actually do with the story rather than just kind of go to one place, go to another place and like pick up bits of story as you go. It would actually give you somewhere to go and have a challenging experience and a goal. And then also with the multiplayer potentially playing a part of that as well, you could have like co-op dungeon raiding parties or something like that. Now that, I know, like, when I'm saying all this stuff, it sounds crazy. Like, if you think about what we've got in No Man's Sky right now, it's all about the exploration, and I don't think that will ever change. But the idea of also being able to explore buildings or structures or dungeons as well as just planets, to me, would be a really cool next step for the game. And based on all this stuff that I'm seeing and the digging that I'm doing into all of this, maybe I've just been looking at this screen for too long. Maybe my mind has gone crazy. Maybe waiting for the update has just completely unhinged me. But all of that, to me, fits together quite well and would make sense for what we could potentially see as one of these big surprises that a lot of us are kind of excited about. We don't really know. The big question, right, has been, okay, so we kind of know multiplayer is definitely coming. We're expecting more lore and story. We're expecting improvements to things like the variation, the terrain generation, all of that stuff, trying to bring it closer to the E3 vision. We're expecting all of that. And if they just did that, right, if they just gave us an update that brought the game very close to how it looked in E3 trailers, that would be completely incredible. It would be the best game ever. We'd all be like blown away. Like, don't get me wrong, that would make me so happy. I love the game now, so if it was at that level, I would just, like, my joy and my excitement to explore in that world and that universe would never end. But they have specifically said we're also going to get some surprises. Now, what else could there be? Like, if you start to think about other features that we're not expecting, VR, yeah, maybe that's one of them, but I think a lot of people are kind of expecting that. We've discovered the ambient mode that was hidden in the PC version of the game. That's been uncovered. There's a mode where you basically, it's almost like a spectator mode, right? You just kind of float around within one particular planet. You can't really do anything, but you can just look at stuff. And in my mind, I'm still sticking with the idea that the Wear website that's part of the Waking Titan ARG heavily teases at VR. So I think all of that kind of stuff makes it not really that surprising now if they do drop VR. Definitely I could see us being wrong and that just being Waking Titan lore and story, and I'm incorrect in that assumption and that prediction doesn't turn out to happen and we don't get VR. But at the same time, if we did get it now, I don't think I would genuinely be surprised. And I think there's a lot of people that also would say, this is awesome, I wanted VR, like, this is a really cool thing they've added as well as all the next update content stuff. But I don't think it would be a massive surprise to see VR come to the game. Whereas something like this, dungeons, cities, co-op raiding parties, all of that baked into the lore and the story elements of the game, making it almost like very light RPG-ish type gameplay in places of the story. To me, that would be a huge surprise. And from what I've seen, from the information that we've got, like, that's the only thing at the moment that I can think of as being plausible, but also still being enough to surprise me. What do you guys think about that? Do you think this could be one of those surprises that's been teased, or do you think this is just entirely a side project and it's not going to be anything like what Sam is working on with No Man's Sky? And if that is the case, what do you think he is doing there? Like, you've got a guy that specializes in procedural city generation and dungeon generation and environments. If he's not doing that on No Man's Sky, then what do you think he's doing? That's the first thing I'd want to know for anyone that says this is nonsense and it can't happen. Fine, maybe I'm wrong, but if he's not doing that, then what else could he possibly be doing? And if that's not one of the surprises, I'd be super excited to hear what you guys think the surprises could be. What other stuff could they bring to the game that would be cool, that would still fit with the game and work with the concepts of the game and what the vision of that game was, but at the same time would still surprise you? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think about this theory. Let me know what you think about Apparent and Sam Swain and everything that I've shown here. And of course, remember to go and check out Cobra TV. I'm guessing everyone who watches my channel already watches him, but if by some crazy scenario in the world you haven't stumbled across his channel and you're not watching his videos, then please go and make sure you do that, because I have a lot of fun watching that stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I see and take inspiration from and like cool stuff that I never even thought of usually comes either from Cobra himself or from people that he has on the subcast in those discussion videos and streams. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that one, guys. I know this is kind of crazy. I know what I'm talking about would be absolutely massive and quite groundbreaking and a huge change to the game and what's in the game now. I'm aware of that. I don't want to get people too hyped, but at the same time, I enjoy talking about this stuff. And I think in this case, I do think discussing stuff like this is merited. I think there's the good reason to do it. I've not just made this up out of nowhere. And even if I had, it's a speculation video. It's fun to talk about what we think could be coming in the update while we wait. So don't take everything I'm saying too seriously. Don't get angry if this doesn't turn out to be something that's coming to the game, but definitely have a think about it and let me know if you agree that this could be one of those surprises. And if it is, if this does come to the game, is it something you actually want? Do you think it would be cool, or do you just hate the idea of some of the stuff that I'm talking about? I don't know. Hopefully you enjoyed that one, guys. Definitely down the rabbit hole a little bit there. I'll take my tinfoil hat off now and we'll get back to playing the game while we wait for the update. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that one. If you did enjoy it, please drop a like and a comment, and I will catch you in another video soon. Take care, guys, and peace.